Are you ready to leverage speaking as your best form of marketing? There are over 7,500 events looking for speakers every single day. Speaking positions you as the expert in the room, but you probably don't know where to start. So I created this great resource called the Directory of Places to Speak. This resource will help you get started today. So head on over to speakandstandout.com/directory to grab your free copy now. Don't miss this opportunity to be the expert speaking to audiences filled with your ideal clients. Would you consider yourself to be a celebrity? Well, what if you stepped into being a micro celebrity? That is what today's guest is going to talk about. We are going to be talking about hosting our own events and also stepping into being a micro celebrity as part of your marketing plan. He is a former lawyer who came into the online space, purely with the intention of growing his law practice. Fell in love with the online world and has helped many, many entrepreneurs. He's actually their secret weapon, and I know several of them. So let's get on to the show. You're listening to Be in Demand, the podcast for honest advice, inspiring stories, and ideas for growing your business by leveraging the expert that you are. I'm your host, Laurie-Ann, business mentor, and I'm also a reformed painfully shy girl, red wine lover, and exercise enthusiast. Join me as I share how being positioned as the expert in your industry, even if it's a busy one, will help you stand out and be the one in demand to hire and work with. Ron, thank you so much for coming on the show. I already know that this is going to be a great conversation. I've met you in person and got to see you in action, hosting your own event and also being a micro celebrity. Because I've heard about you. God, I started hearing about you the beginning of 2023. So can you just give like a snippet? Because you haven't always been in the online world. And I don't think anybody goes to college saying, hey, I'm going to be an online marketer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the very quick version of the story is that I was kind of this awkward kid growing up. I actually was part of my story is that I was actually held back from the second grade. And for that, I kind of felt like there was something wrong with me throughout my entire life. And because of that, I ended up really overcompensating and deciding that I'm smart, I'm going to be successful. And so I did what they tell you to be successful. I decided to become a lawyer. And I ended up basically doing that for a couple of years, but I knew right away that was not what I wanted to do. And just through a variety of one thing led to another, and I ended up discovering this idea of information marketing. This was back in the early 2000s, about 2004, 2005. Online marketing was just kind of emerging, but really what the idea was like selling information. So actually my first thing I ever sold was actually a course on how to do well in law school, because they tell you to write about what you know about.
Right.
And that we actually sent through the mail. We actually I printed out books and stuff like that, because that was like the thing that you did back in those days. And then one thing led to another. I ended up starting another business where it was actually in the dating and relationships market, which I was not the expert, as you may imagine, but I worked behind the scenes on that business. And then I ended up starting some other businesses in a variety of niches. And then, flash forward about 10 years later, I really realized that I had a lot to share. I had a bigger message to share. And that's when I really stepped out behind the scenes and decided to do what I'm doing now, which is being that personal brand and really sharing my message with the world. So that's the literal 2-minute origin story.
Yeah. And helping a lot of entrepreneurs. I know some of the people that you've helped come out of nowhere or come up with programs that I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And we won't divulge any names here or anything, or maybe we will later. But I think that you definitely have a knack. So, here you were in that online space and sharing that information. Were you doing that while you were in law school or after you passed the bar or something?
Yeah. So
you just realized this billable hours stuff is not for me?
Yeah. So the actual technical timeline was that I found out about online marketing, information marketing. It's like my second or third year of law school. That one was kind of on my radar. That's when I kind of got into it. And then that was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then at the time, I was really into this guy, Dan Kennedy, who is like my biggest business mentor, I think you've heard of. And the thing that most of his students did, they would start out in like a for example, people would use his system, which is basically a marketing system on how to get clients and customers. And he would like first, and he worked with service providers, like it might be like chiropractors or accountants or lawyers, for example. So what his trajectory was, people would use his system and they would use it to build their law practice or build their dental practice, chiropractor practice. And then they would basically teach that system. Then they would basically teach people how to build their own dental practice, law practice. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
so
it does.
my thinking at the time, like during my third year of law school, I'll become a lawyer for a couple of years and I'll kind of like learn how to build a law practice. And then I'll later on teach people how to grow law practices. That was kind of like the initial kind of just thinking at the time. It turned out I ended up actually working just as a litigator. So I wasn't really in a position to like really grow a law practice.
Here's what I find so interesting about that, because I'm always fascinated by people's pathways and that, like you follow the breadcrumbs. It's like, oh, this is what Dan Kennedy helps people do. Well, like one day I'm going to have a law practice. So I'm going to need to know all these skills.
Exactly.
And you just keep following the breadcrumbs.
That's always it. Yeah. One of my favorite topics for sure. Just do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you position yourself as a micro celebrity? And was that intentional?
So that's a good question. So to kind of flash forward, kind of going through the quick story. So I ended up I was kind of working behind the scenes up until about 2000, like really, really behind the scenes, like where nobody knew about me up until about 2016, 17. That's when I was kind of just selling my own digital products and things like that. And then I ended up, the first time I really kind of did a little bit of quote unquote personal branding and taking clients. I really just started, I was like a high paid consultant. I was a 7-figure launch consultant. That's what I did because I worked on quite a few like 7-figure launches. People wanted to know how to do that. So I was basically like this kind of almost like a behind the scenes, like hired gun type person, if that makes sense. But I still had I would still go to events. I still spoke at some events and things like that. But it was still kind of like almost one of my mentors at the time he helped me position myself as more of like, you ever see the movie Hitch?
Yeah.
Hitch, the Will Smith movie. Like the idea, like one of the things is like, nobody knows Hitch's number, right? You only get it through like a secret means, right? Basically,
right.
But that was kind of the positioning that I had at that time. And
was that intentional?
That was kind of, yeah, I guess it was intentional. Yeah, it was.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I wasn't really doing a lot of the real overt personal branding type stuff. But I think we all just, you know how it is. We all want to just grow our brands more. We want to reach more people. And so then I ended up about a year or so after that. That's when I was a lot more conscious about really building my micro celebrity brand and things like that and putting out intentional content. And to be honest, it did take me a while we'll talk about this, I'm sure. It wasn't until later on, following the breadcrumbs, where I kind of really narrowed in on my ideal client and who I was going to be that micro celebrity for, if that makes sense. So to answer your question, it didn't start out intentional, but then I kind of became more intentional about it later.
Interesting. And so for the audience, if you can just define what micro celebrity is.
Yeah. So basically being a micro celebrity, it is essentially becoming like this celebrity, like this larger than life, kind of like the superhero metaphor to a very carefully selected group of people. And this is one of the things I learned from Dan Kennedy, which is that money moves to status. And this is we like it or not, this is just how the world works, that people, they just value celebrity so much. And one of the amazing things, it is a true opportunity online. You literally only need to make yourself that larger than life celebrity and have status. It doesn't need to be with that many people in order to build a really successful multi-6, even 7-figure business. So that's what it means.
How would you, if I was to put you on the spot, which I'm going to do right now, and give our audience, two steps, 2 ideas, 2 calls to action on here's how you can become a micro celebrity, what would they be?
Okay, great. So the first one is you want to create, I mentioned this a second ago, your superhero persona. So a way to think about this is you want to almost think about yourself as a caricature. My favorite metaphor for this is, are you familiar? I would imagine you're not a fan, but are you familiar with WWE, professional wrestling?
Yes, I am.
So like me, you probably don't watch it every day, but
I don't know the characters. I don't know the fighters, but I know what you're talking about.
But you know what I'm talking about. So when professional wrestlers go to wrestling schools, when they help them kind of build their characters, what they say is you want to take your existing personality and multiply it by 10. That is kind of like step one to becoming a micro celebrity. You want to think about your persona. So I like to think of myself as, like, when I think of my character, it's really like this quirky marketing genius dude. That's like the character I play. Like, I'm kind of awkward. Like, as you can tell, I'm not the most polished speaker in the world, but that works for me. So that's kind of why people gravitated towards me, if that makes sense. So one of the other, just thinking about some of our mutual friends here, you mentioned one of the people you've had on this podcast before is Adela, right? Like Adela, she does a great job of like having that persona in the sense that she's like a very charismatic. She has this bigger personality, but she's also like a badass. She worked for like Deloitte. She worked for like some big consulting firms. She's like a big deal. And she does a really good job of having that come across in her content, for example. But again, it doesn't have to be, those are kind of extremes. I'll give you one more example. Another one of our, I think the way we initially connected was through our friend, Linda Sadu. And Linda, I wouldn't say she's the opposite of Adela, but she's much more sweet. She's much more,
got a different personality.
She's very like, her thing is getting people together. She's very warm, but she's also she's a very sharp marketer. You know what I mean? So that's so both those two do a great job of bringing out their personas to their audience. So that's kind of step one, is that. And I do have a 6-part framework that I'm excited to share more details about as we move forward with this. But the other part that I'll tell you about now, it's really getting clear on what your values are. That's really what you stand for and what you stand against. So that's really, really important. So like standing for things like integrity, or like if you're telling people how to, the idea, like, I believe that everybody has a message that they need to share with the world. That's like the kind of message that people can resonate with, if that makes sense. And also goes with things that you want to stand against. This idea of creating an enemy, which is one of the most powerful ways you can persuade people. So this is where you don't really want your enemy to be like a person, like a specific person. It's usually like an entity. So one of the enemies, like these coaching factories that are just like, signing up all these clients, but you never talk to the expert, for example. And that's cool because I have like essentially a smaller practice where people who work in my programs, they get to work with me specifically, for example. I mean, what are some other examples?
Well, here's what I'm thinking about is that, like, one of the things when I'm working with clients or inside of my group program in Demand Signature Speech is that I tell, like, one of the first things that we do, what kind of a speaker do you want to be? 3 words, 3 short phrases. And the reason why we're doing that, and it's sort of similar to what you're talking about, like your values, your enemy, is so that every part of your speech that we write needs to be looked at through the filter of those 3 words.
Yeah, for sure.
Phrases. 100%. And I also wanted to add about the persona, which I totally get. And, you had Todd Herman like speak at your event, and like he's all about the alter ego effect. And to be able to step into that personality of yourself that is just dying to get out there. I mean, that's what I tell like my students, my coaching clients, is like, you have to have a speaking persona so that when you step out on stage, like it's different than when you're at home cooking dinner or like eating at the table with the family. You have to be a different person because it's a different, I don't want to say modality. It's just like, it requires a different part of you.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that's really interesting just along those lines, I think in Todd's book, he actually talks about like the alter ego, as he calls it, that's actually like the real you. Like that actually is like when the person you want to be, if that makes sense. Like most of us are actually kind of holding that part back. It's kind of like giving yourself permission.
We all went to school when we were taught not to be the real us. Yes.
Yeah. So we got to give ourselves permission to be that person for sure. 100%.
Yeah. I love that. So, are you ready to leverage speaking as your best form of marketing? There are over 7,500 events looking for speakers every single day. Speaking positions you as the expert in the room. but you probably don't know where to start. So I created this great resource called the Directory of Places to Speak. This resource will help you get started today. So head on over to speakandstandout.com/directory to grab your free copy now. Don't miss this opportunity to be the expert speaking to audiences filled with your ideal clients. All right. So those were two fantastic tips to step into your micro celebrity and just take it from there. So I know that you also host your own events.
Yes.
And I'm super curious myself about when was your first hosted event?
Mhm.
Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I remember very vividly. Yes. So I'll tell you the story. So I ended up right after I really started my own consulting practice. This was early 2017. I joined the program like many of us do. And my mentor at the time, this amazing guy, Adam Urbanski, he basically said, because I was really skilled, I worked with all these big players, a lot of good stuff. And I would just do whatever he told me to do. He said, well, what I would do if I were you, I would do my own event. I would charge $10,000 a person, and where you're just going to show people all of your secrets on how you're going to do it. And I was just very green at the time. And this super freaked me out, like so much. Anyways, long story short, I was so afraid to do it. I ended up doing the event, but I didn't do it until the event happened in October of that year. So it took me about, no joke, it took me 6 months just to kind of get ready to do it. And just promoting it wasn't specifically that difficult, but just to have the courage to promote my own event, because I'd never done an event before. And so I ended up kind of positioning myself as a launch expert at that time. And so I ended up doing the 7-figure launch intensive, which for 3 days, I was going to show you everything you need to know about how to have a 7-figure launch. I ended up having 7 people there. And it was at the time was the most difficult thing I ever did in my life. It was cramming for every night. I was up late, creating slides, and I didn't sleep. And it was just but it was definitely one of those things where legitimately, I think we talked about this in San Antonio. It's every time you do an event, if it's a bigger event, every time you do a bigger event than the one, or a bigger, better event than you do in the past, it's always an up leveling. It's the ultimate personal development experience in a lot of ways. It's one of the ultimate, right?
It is. So and I love doing them too.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. It's this crazy addiction we have. But yeah, after I did that event, I really did feel wow, I've reached a new level. And yeah, it was a success. So that was the first one. That was in early 2017. And then since then.
Wait a minute, Ron, I'm super curious, right? You had 7 people. Did you charge $10,000 or was there a different price?
I ended up, so most of them ended up paying $5,000. I didn't quite have the gumption to charge $10,000, to be totally honest.
But still, $5,000 is still good for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it would definitely,
for your first event? Oh, hell
yeah. Totally. Yeah, it totally worked out for sure. And of course, most importantly, beyond the money was just all the other things that come from doing that. Yeah. And then since I did that event, I've pretty much done about 3 or 4 live in-person events every year since then, kind of beginning in 2018. So I've done quite a few of them over the years.
Good for you. And what was the purpose behind doing, what was the intent behind doing an in-person live event?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that's evolved. It's a really, obviously, yeah, purpose is to make money, create transformations for people. Those are kind of the quick answers. But why? But as I'm talking about this, as I'm thinking about this, because there's other ways to make money versus doing live events, right? So yes, I think I do. So 2 things that are going on here. So on one hand, the reason why live events are awesome is because it's really the best way to create transformation for people. But it's actually true that there's no better experience that you can have, really as a client that someone wants to learn something, than going to a live event. Because if you go to a good live event, not only do you have the experience of being in a new place and all the things that come with that, and just kind of getting out of the office and whatnot, you also can connect with other amazing people, which most of us who go to events, that's actually oftentimes the best part of going to the events. And that's where the magic happens. You teach people how to get on stages, right? And the magical secret to getting on stage is to meet more people and connect with them. And the best way to do that is to go to live events where there's people that might have stages and whatnot.
It's
right?
such a domino effect.
Absolutely.
Live events, build relationships, meet the meeting planners,
right. Yeah.
Build those relationships with people, because you never know when they're going to need a speaker last minute. They're planning another event. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So live events, they're like it's like networking on steroids. That's one of the aspects, but then it's actually the best way to actually learn things and actually get things done, like live in-person workshops. They're just really, really valuable. So from that standpoint, live events are awesome. The other reason why live events are awesome, kind of the longer version of that they make money, is it really is that the whole micro celebrity thing we've been talking about. I mean, there is no better way to position yourself as like the ultimate bigger than life celebrity than leading your own, really kind of more the better. Like, like a 2 or 3 day event. A 1 day event is cool, but like if you can lead a 3 day event, like especially if you design the event in a certain way and things like that, you'll just create so much celebrity, so much authority that it's really, really difficult to not have a good portion of those people sign up as clients. One of the things I like to say is that I've been reading books about parenting and things like that lately. And one of the things in one of the books I read is that kids spell love Time. The idea that the more time you spend with them, that's how you show them love. Well, the other thing that also spelled Time is sale. Sale is also spelled Time. The more time people spend with you, the more they're inclined to purchase from you. So that's actually one of the slight digression. That's actually kind of a micro celebrity hack, really, is just being consistent and just spending time with people is a way to kind of raise that authority level. So again,
And I saw you do that really well at the San Antonio event.
Why, thank
you. Yeah, I did. And I'll share with you. I mean, I already did a previous podcast episode where I was talking about how I fell in love with live events again. As an attendee, like as the speaker, you are building relationships with the people that are in that audience. But as an attendee, you may not be building relationships with as many people, but the relationships that you do, at least like this, I'm still into really connecting with people.
Yeah.
And just having those deep conversations.
Absolutely.
But I literally fell in love again with live events as attendees. I was just like, I mean, I came home from your event and I was like, all right, what other live events put on my calendar?
Totally, for sure. Yeah. Speaking my language.
And I already have at least 3
nice.
so far live events that I'm traveling for this year alone.
Oh, nice.
So I'm glad that worked well. And I've hosted my own events. And just like you said, like the more love you give the audience, that's spelt with time. And I just made people like an offer, like, hey, if you have a call with me and have signed on clients,
absolutely, for sure.
Those live events.
And just to like inspire people here. So we're talking about live in-person events, but I know people listen to this. You listen to this might not be at that level where you're ready to do your own live event. I would say you probably are more ready than you think you are, because my first live event had 7 people. But even if, I've had events and I've been to events where I'm like one of 4 people and it's still a really, really good experience. But even if you, for whatever reason, putting on a live in-person event is nerve-wracking for you, do a virtual event. You can do a virtual event with just a handful of people, get any amount, do a 2 to 3 day virtual event, maybe not 3 days, do a 2-day virtual event with 5, 7, 8 people. Half those people will probably become clients of yours. It's a really, really good strategy.
It's an excellent strategy. So what do you think? I'm going to go back to the micro celebrity. What do you think the biggest mistake is that people make when trying to be a micro celebrity?
Yeah. So the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to being a micro celebrity is really they focus way too much on their teaching content. Like they're just trying to give people how-to content, step by step, where really, the truth of the matter is that content, it doesn't really make you stand out as much as the things that are not related to your teaching content. Things like your persona, your values, showing your vulnerability, your backstory, just the things that make you, your quirks, the things that make you an interesting person. Like you're actually going to get more clients by talking about your favorite TV show and things that annoy you than you are by giving people like the detailed step-by-step roadmap on how to get speaking gigs or whatnot. It's totally counterintuitive.
Okay, so there are people who are listening to this right now saying, I got to talk about my favorite TV show. So go on and explain that a little bit more for people.
Okay, so the thing here is that the truth of the matter is most of us, people in the expert space, coaches, experts, is that there are so many people that do the exact same things that we do. Like I'm essentially a business coach, marketing strategist. you are, I would categorize you as like a speaking visibility expert strategist. There's a lot of people that do what I do. There's a lot of people that do what you do. There's some of them, we like to say that we have the greatest, most life-changing content on earth. I would say that that's true, but let's say that's not. Let's say there are other people that have as good, maybe possibly better content than we do. Let's say that that's possible. So it's really hard to stand out just by kind of like what you're teaching or like what your actual content is. So the only thing that makes you really unique, the only thing that can really, really make you stand out is the fact that you are you. The fact that there's only one of you on the planet and that you have all of your unique, your unique units.
One of the first things that I do when I'm working with private clients is I will ask them, like, what are your hobbies? What is something interesting about you that might surprise people? So for instance, I had one of my clients and she was a storytelling expert, and her husband would redo houses.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So she had this beautiful construction. And because she was like this really pretty blonde, and so for her to talk about power tools,
yeah,
it just like I had to bring that out into her because it's like,
sure,
that is going to appeal to the men that are in the audience. Like now they're going to really be able to relate to you because of this building hobby of yours.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's exactly where I was going. A great touch point there. Is there's a lot of people that do the same thing as us. But the reason why someone will hire me versus another business coach, or the reason why someone will hire LA versus another speaking visibility coach is because they resonate with us. People say, oh, I just didn't resonate. I don't really resonate with him. I don't really resonate with her. So how do you get people to resonate with you? By bringing more of you out there, right? The more you can bring out to the surface, the more you're going to get the right people to resonate with you. Once we know who our ideal client is, and you really want to be as specific with that as we can be, really more specific than most people think. I joke, but it's actually true that half my clients are brown-haired business coaches. Like, it's not an accident. So once we know that, and then if we can just really kind of flash that light and really just do what we can to really just make those people resonate with us, that's how we create that micro celebrity. And this is really how people become clients of ours.
Yeah. So everybody who's listening to this, the bottom line is embrace your uniqueness.
Totally.
And
for sure.
Share that with others. And I know that when I first started out, in the online space, or even when I first started out, on stages, I kind of held that part back until somebody gave me some really good feedback, because I was just I was very guarded about who I was. And as soon as I embraced my uniqueness and started sharing that more, it's you could feel that from the audience. And that was the truth that I started getting back.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive. You always think yeah, but who needs to know these things about myself? But tell you, people, it just makes you so much more interesting.
Totally. And that's how they really connect with you, especially when you can show vulnerability and things like that. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
So this has been literally a pack full of information here.
Do it.
That's right. Let's see. Any pieces of words of wisdom that you want to give everybody before we bring this to a close?
I think that really the biggest word of wisdom I could give you is kind of I would say, the most important lesson I've ever learned in business. I've learned many, but one of the most important is from this book, a great book I read quite a few years ago. It's a book called The Trick by a guy named William something. So anyways, this book, now it's a very entertaining book. I would not say you have to read this book, but it's an entertaining book. It's written by this guy. He was this English journalist. He wrote for magazines like Vanity Fair and stuff along those lines, but he was always broke. He was always broke. Then he wanted to find out, why am I broke? So then he basically spent a couple of years following around and interviewing some of the richest people in the world, people that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, billionaires. And so in the book, what he came up to, the book is called The Trick. And what the kind of conclusion of the book is that the trick to becoming wealthy, it's really, you just have to keep going. Because the trick is to keep going, because you might even be going in the wrong direction half the time, more than half the time, 99% of the time. But you only need to do the right thing once, And then that's how you can become wealthy. So the trick really is just to keep going. So this is like the most important advice I could give anyone, is that just keep going. Do not stop. So two things. It's not really going to get easier. Even when you think I'm making $100,000 is going to make you happy, you're going to find out, or that you've made it. You're going to find there's all sorts of problems you're going to have. Same thing if you're making $1 million. Same thing if you're making $10 million. But as long as you keep going, you're going to be okay. This is like the most important lesson always.
I love that. It reminds me of a quote. Success is never owned. It's rented, and the rent is due every day.
Yes. Very good one. Totally.
It's
100%.
Nobody knows where it originates from.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would share who that was right now, but I will make sure that that book, The Trick by that author, is down in the show notes. Ron, would you just share with everybody like how they can find you, how they can follow you, and if you have something special for the audience?
Yes. I do have something actually very, very special. So ways you can find me are best places on Facebook, my personal Facebook profile. So if you just type in Ron Reich on Facebook and look for
that'll be right down in the show notes, everybody.
That would be the great.
Facebook is your number one place.
Yeah. Find me on Facebook. Yes. Add me, send me a direct message, and I'll be happy to connect with you. So we'll love to connect with you there. I do have a very special gift. So because I'm going to be honest with you, if you are listening to this podcast, like if you've made it this far, then you're awesome. I commend you. And I really want to reward you for listening to this. So I'm going to give you something that's really awesome. Actually, this is not hype. I actually have a course that I've sold from anywhere between $500 to $2,000. It's called my 50K in 50 day program. It shows you step by step how to make 50K in 50 days. Also, the first part of it, the first couple modules, they go through in depth, like with detailed exercises on really all the micro celebrity stuff that we're talking about. So I want to give you free access to that course. All you have to do is go to ronreich.com/blueprint, ronreich.com/blueprint. And then it's not a sexy page. It's actually going to redirect to my UpCoach page. Like basically it's where you can create your login and you'll just get direct access to the course. So
yes,
I'm really hooking you up here. This is a really amazing course.
This is a great course because I personally know this because I have access to it and you are going to love it, everybody. So I will make sure that link to that is also down in the show notes. So it'll be really easy, just one click and you can get over there. So fantastic. Ron, thank you so much for everything that you shared and just like sharing your beautiful wisdom, with my audience.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
So this is what I want you all to do now. And I want to make sure that you go step into your micro celebrity, figure out who that is, the values, who the enemy is, who that persona is, and step into that. And make sure you hop on over to ronreich.com/blueprints and get a hold of that 50K in 50 days course that he is offering everybody. And until next time, make sure you go and be in demand. Thanks for hanging out with me. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And join me over in my private Facebook group for more tips, community, and free trainings. You'll find the link in the show notes. You can also help this podcast reach more listeners by leaving a review. And as a thank you, each month I pick one of my reviewers to win a free coaching call with me. So if you haven't done so already, please leave a review and you could be the next winner.